Like,
I hope so. Well, I think we need several minutes.
yeah,
Can
that's
we
fine.
start like another 10 minutes because I'm still waiting for all the students to join us.
Not a problem. Not a
Okay, ini
problem.
Pak Nurwanto already been there. Pak Nurwanto?
Nurwanta, yeah, yeah.
Halo, Pak Nurwanto, are you there? Wait, I'll check on him.
Not a problem.
Okay, I will call you later on ya, Pak Jaya.
Hello,
Nah. Halo,
hello.
halo, who is it? Who is it, Pak Nurwanto?
Yeah, me
Where is your
actually still
face?
getting here soon.
Are you in
Yeah.
the office?
How are
Ah,
you, Dr. Janali?
Assalamualaikum, how are you? Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Wait. Hello.
Hello?
This is where mass movements come from. You understand me? These are the building blocks of any sort of grassroots mobilization. Union membership, labor union membership in the 1950s accounted for over 32% of American workers. But in 2026, it's less than 11%.
All right. How are you, Janali?
I'm good, how are you?
Yeah, good. Alhamdulillah. Long
Yeah,
time no see.
I know.
Yeah.
Time
Are you
flies.
still staying
Yeah,
in Sydney, brother?
yeah, still in Sydney, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. You
See that
planning to come to
question.
Sydney?
Yeah.
Are you planning to come to Sydney anytime soon?
Yeah, I have a plan to go to Sydney maybe this next month in May.
Oh,
It's
okay.
still my visa in process.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically my university, Universitas Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta, gave mandate to me to provide the lecture. It's kind of international community service.
Okay.
Yeah, in a mosque
Yeah.
located Wali Park.
Oh, Wiley Park with
Yeah, Wali Park. Yeah.
Sheikh Khalid Bin Yaqub.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
I know
believe
him.
you know him well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know his son as well. Actually, I met his son on Friday, on Sunday.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
perfect. Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
So they building a masjid in Wiley Park.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But I'm maybe miss information regarding whether the mosque right now in the process of the establishment or
No, they haven't started yet, according
mm,
to Sheikh's son.
yeah,
They have some funding issues, I think.
yeah, right. Yeah. And also regarding the permit, I think from the government a bit strictly
Yeah,
issued regarding the time frame, and then
yeah,
yeah, there are a lot of things need to be
yeah,
prepared.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Pak
Yeah.
Syifa already join us. Salam, Pak Syifa. How are you?
Waalaikumsalam. Good. Thank
Eh,
you.
Are you in
Assalamualaikum,
Malay now?
everybody.
Uh,
Yes, in Kuala Lumpur,
Oh,
Hmm.
doing community service here.
I'm
Thank
traveling.
you.
Assalamualaikum, Jan
Oh.
Ali. How are
Oh,
you?
Waalaikumsalam. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you
Alhamdulillah.
again.
Good to see you. Which faculty are you in Malaysia?
Actually, no, I'm traveling in Malaysia. I'm from
Oh,
Yogyakarta, actually, but
okay,
right
okay,
now I'm traveling to Malaysia
okay.
for doing community service here.
Oh, okay, okay.
Well, okay, I think we can start now ya.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pak Janali, Pak
Oh,
Nurwanto, Pak Syifa. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam
Warahmatullahi
In
warahmatullahi
this
wabarakatuh.
great occasion, I will welcome everybody, especially our co-hosts. Yeah, we have Surah, Universitas Muhammadiyah Surabaya, and
Isimu,
Sekolah Tinggi
studi Islam,
Studi Islam
Muhammadiyah.
Muhammadiyah Pacitan. So generally, the member or the participant today is not only from our university, Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta, but also from Surabaya, Muhammadiyah Surabaya, and Sekolah Tinggi
okay.
Muhammadiyah Pacitan. Before we start our international guest lecture today, I will ask Pak Nurwanto as our dean to give a short speech as the opening.
Okay.
Please, Pak
Yep.
Nurwanto.
Okay. Thank you, Budin, for having me and all of you guys. First of all, of course, the esteemed speaker, Dr. Jan Ali, from Australia, especially University of Western Sydney, or Western Sydney University, located in Sydney. Thank you very much, Dr. Jan Ali,
Thank you
for
for having
being
me.
here in this online session that will give a talk regarding the future of global Islam, bridging Western sociology and Western Eastern intellectualism. And of course, here along with you, Dr. Muhammad Syifa Amin from Universitas Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta, and also here the moderator, Dr. Tweediana Budi Absari. Thank you to all of you to be speakers and then moderator to make this international seminar or international GAC lecture possible for us to be here. And of course, as Bu Tweediana said, that Faculty of Islamic Studies and Civilization, Universitas Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta, also cooperate with two other universities, that is University of Muhammadiyah Surabaya, especially the Faculty of Islamic Studies and Civilization, and Institute of Islamic Studies, Muhammadiyah, Pacitan. Yeah, thank you very much for being co-host of this international guest lecture. Today's seminar with the topic is truly important and timely regarding the challenge for us, Muslim society on the one hand, and Islamic studies on the other hand, or religious studies on the other hand, how then we are encountering the issue of, let's say, epistemologically speaking, to approach Islamic studies with, let's say, Western perspective or scientific perspective and other things, because we often relate Islamic studies only with, let's say, theological understanding. Yeah, for example, in Islam, we only based on the text or dalil, as Allah state in the Quran, or Prophet Muhammad, blessing and peace be upon him, shown in his hadith. However, if we are trying to deep into the discussion, discourses and practicalities, the emergence of dalil or text in the Quran and also the hadith by Prophet Muhammad, blessing and peace be upon him, come from the context, the situation where the text is bounded, or let's say influenced by the situation or the fact where, for example, the prophet and his companion live, yeah, at that time. So right now, it is challenge for us how then we try to bring all together the text as stated in the Quran and the Hadith into the current contemporary multicultural vibrant society in global context and local context. I think right now we are having appropriate and then important speakers to bring us all together to understand about this complexity, and how then both speakers hopefully able to show and describe easily for us to understand the context of Islamic norm on the one hand, and then the challenge of society on the other hand. And in that way, we're trying to see the place of global Islam, let's say. Is there any, for example, contrasting position between global Islam and local Islam? And perhaps the Dr. Jan Ali and Dr. Muhammad Syifa can explain further. And of course, I do believe that there are a lot of things that can be explained and discussed coming from two experts being here right now, Dr. Jan Ali and Dr. Muhammad Syifa. Okay, again, thank you very much for all participants, and enjoy this process of let's say listening to the presentation speech from both speakers, and also please enjoy the process of discussion as well to this international guest lecture. Thank you very much, Bu Dina. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you very
Waalaikumsalam.
much.
Thank you, Pak Nurwanto. Before we start, please do open your camera, yeah, for all the participants to make sure that you are listening to this lecture.
Oh ya,
And for
Bu
our
Dina,
guests,
right
yeah,
now there are 134 participants coming.
54, yes,
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. But I hope they all have no problem with the connection, so they can open the camera so we can see
Yeah.
all of the faces. Okay. Uh, please do for the first speaker. I allow you, Pak Janali first, yeah. Your time is 30 minutes, and then will be followed by Pak Syifa. Then after that, we will have question and answer for everyone. Pak Janali, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Tridiana. Let me open my... are you able to, can I open my slide?
Sure, can you? Wait.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Can you see it? Yeah, there.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, good. Okay, Jazakallah khair. Okay, thank you very much to Nurwanto and to Diana for the kind invitation to give this public lecture today. I sincerely appreciate, and thanks also to the participants who have taken time to attend this public lecture. I sincerely appreciate it. What I'm going to talk today is perhaps not so much Islam in the global world or global perspective, but perhaps sociology and sociology of Islam. And perhaps I can explore this a bit more in Q&A session rather than here. And I will make some comments as I go about Islamic studies and the study of Islam um, more broadly. Sociology and sociology of Islam, that is my topic today for this particular guest lecture session. And so disregard the red part, actually. I was supposed to delete it. I forgot. Okay, so in terms of sociology, when we're talking about sociology in contemporary period, whether that is in the context of a Western university or a non-Western university, such as a university in Indonesia, we are talking generally about a sociology from Western perspective, or what might be said in another way, which is Western sociology. And so, what is a sociology from Western perspective or a Western sociology? Basically, it is a uh, hello, yes. Uh, it is a way of analyzing the way societies have developed and the way societies function with a specific focus on social structures and processes, institutions, and relationships. So, social structures, what kind of social structures we have in place, what are some of the social processes, how interaction takes place, institutions, how they function, and relationships, how relationships are forged and operationalized. So, Western sociology, and I sometimes will be using Western sociology and sociology interchangeably to mean the same thing, basically emerged in early 19th century in Europe, at a time when Europe was undergoing huge transformation. There was Industrial Revolution, French Revolution, and of course the Enlightenment movement, um, causing massive social disruptions. People started rethinking about everyday living, and there were processes involved as well, and that was industrialization and urbanization taking place on a wide and rapid scale. And therefore, to understand this transformation and how to manage this transformation, which basically, in a nutshell, took place as a shift from rural living or traditional societies to societies founded on principles of urbanism and industrialism, that is, using science and technology as the foundation of everyday living, and therefore the introduction of machine-driven manufacturing and factory production, basically on large scale rather than on small scale. And so sociology emerged as a response to this. That is to understand how this has occurred and how this works. So in 1838, Auguste Comte, an Italian scholar, actually coined the term sociology to examine these new processes and developments. But by the way, and this is what I mean by Western sociology, because sociology itself was developed originally by Ibn Khaldun, a classic Muslim scholar, several hundred years before this. Before the European colonialism. But that's a different focus and story. We're not going to go there. So, following this, thinkers, and some of you might know Karl Marx, Max Weber, and Emil Durkheim, basically emerged as the foundational thinkers of sociology and shaped the foundation of sociology. And so these thinkers who were basically situated in Europe in 19th century became known as the classic sociologists, or classical sociologists, sorry, whose focus basically was to examine these huge monumental social transformations taking place in Europe, in which they lived. And so they wanted to pay particular attention in the investigations to understand the rise of industrialization as a process, the emergence of capitalism, and that is a more systematic, organized way of engaging in the economic activity. So banks and money and contracts and transactions all were being introduced as new way of engaging in the economy. And of course, urbanization, the development of complex, but perhaps one might say more efficient transportation system, the development of centralized but at the same time individualized way of living. So high-rise buildings, um, large shops, um, and economic activity centralized um, in a particular area known as towns or cities. So Marx, his concentration basically was on class conflict, whilst Weber focused on rationalization, basically how to explain things using rationality and not relying on traditional or religion to explain things. In other words, utilization of intellect in rationalizing social reality. And of course, Durkheim on social solidarity, which is a concept actually drawn from Ibn Khaldun, the concept of asabiya or social cohesion. So in sociological inquiry, you will find class inequality, capitalism, individualism, and social transformation emerged as some of the key themes. In other words, the sociologists became interested in inquiring into class inequality, why there are people in society where some people are better off than others, what is happening. And they began to unpack this phenomenon, the class inequality, and were able to then identify some factors, some contributing factors that produce class inequality, where people are divided between rich and poor, haves and haves not, elites and non-elites. This idea of Marx uses the classification of bourgeoisie and proletariat, the bourgeoisie, the capitalist class, those who own the means of production, and those who work in those production processes, the workers. And obviously, in relation to class inequality, for example, sociologists are interested in why this happens and what happens. And so what happens is that those who are the owners of means of production are able to have economic power, and that economic power then enables them to exercise superiority, if you like, economic superiority as well as power superiority over those who work for them. And this class inequality persists because the owners of means of production are not willing to give more to those who are working. In fact, they are more interested in making more money for themselves, and disregard the plights of uh, uh, lower classes, middle and lower classes. Capitalism, again, this whole idea that we actually live, or capitalism in the sense that we live in a system, economic system, where everything is measured against what we might call material wealth and material worth. So in modern capitalism, or in capitalism, an individual is worth only if he or she makes contribution to the economy. If he or she is not, then those individuals are considered to be liability, and somehow the system needs to actually incorporate them into the system to make the system work, and to actually enable those members of society to be part of this system, part of this machine known as capitalism. Individualism is another area that sociologists are interested in. And we all know that we live in a modern capitalist society where we are more interested in material wealth and material reward. And this makes us pursue material wealth, material reward individually rather than collectively. And so, as I mentioned earlier, that there has been a shift from traditional rural way of living to modern urban way of living, and sociologists try to see what has happened and what is taking place. And so these are some of the areas that sociologists focus on: class inequality, capitalism, and individualism. But obviously, these are some of the various other key themes. Western sociology often emphasizes empirical research, so experimental or experiment-based inquiry, and theoretical frameworks are being developed and used, uh, uh, and uh, there is a concerted effort to remain aloof from divine explanations to understand reality, or what we might call in sociology, social reality, and the concepts such as gender roles, race, globalization, modernization, urbanization, so forth and so on. So basically, the idea is here to concentrate on empirically proving something, or talking about something empirically based, not on some kind of myth or mythology, if you like, which can be the case in traditional societies, or in a rural living context. Western sociology is also known as what I call Westocentric sociology or Orientalistic sociology, and I will explain this further as we go. What is sociology focused on, or how to operationalize sociology? So this is just one way of looking at it. It is not the way. So the enterprise or the purview of sociology is to focus and study individual, such as individual identity or individual behavior, or social groups such as family or friends, or a movement, if you like, institutions, for example, education or government. Sociology might look at it individually or in conjunction with each other. So, for example, a sociologist might say, okay, I want to understand individual behavior of a particular group. And so they might actually focus on a particular group. If I can use the groups such as Muhammadiyah, what members of Muhammadiyah do? So the sociologist will say, okay, we want to look at this Muhammadiyah group, and what we want to do is try to understand the identity formation, because Muhammadiyah members have somewhat a distinct identity. Um, and sociology basically connects different aspects of society, culture, norm, values, etc. And also, as you can see in my diagram here, sociology links individuals to larger social structures, such as a group, um, and then try to explain personal experience, such as identity formation, and how these are shaped by groups, say Muhammadiyah as in my example, or maybe institution, by school or university, and of course, more broadly, the society. Okay, so sociology of Islam, which is different from sociology, and I try to explain sociology of Islam in two ways. So Westocentric sociology of Islam, or if you like, Orientalistic sociology of Islam versus existentialistic sociology of Islam. Now, when I say sociologist, Westocentric sociology of Islam, I'm talking about Western educated sociologist or Western sociologist. So Western educated sociologist could be someone from Malaysia, for example, a Muslim, or someone from Japan, studying in, say, France, for example, and becoming a sociologist. And so you would say that he or she is a Western educated sociologist. But someone who is born in the West, let's say a French nationalist, you will call that particular person a Western sociologist. So Westocentric sociology of Islam, or Orientalistic sociology of Islam. And Orientalistic sociology of Islam here, I'm referring to Edward Said's work, and I'm talking about this idea of Orientalistic sociology, where sociology actually looks at Islam in this particular context, and it can be in other religious contexts such as Buddhism or Hinduism, with a very specific gaze, or with a very specific perspective, which is looking at another or the other from a Western perspective, and from a inferior superior perspective, from Western superior, non-Western inferior. Okay, in that kind of um, uh, uh, in that kind of interrelationship. whilst existentialistic sociology of Islam is one that actually focuses on the what I call existential Islam, the Islam, lived Islam, how Muslims live Islam. So you've got sociology of Islam divided into Westocentric, Westocentric Islam, study of Islam, and the other one is existentialistic study of Islam. So Western sociology of Islam, basically, you have perspectives on sociology of Islam which are different from one another. So it is not just one perspective, various perspectives. And these perspectives have different focus and interpretation of Islam. As I mentioned earlier, classic Western thinkers such as Max Weber, for example, in his analysis of Islam, which was not much, but when he wrote his work on Islam, it was in relation to economic and social organization, or Islam as an economic and social system, if you like, or more specifically, Islam's economic and social organization. And he compared it to Christianity in his work on work ethics and Protestant work ethics and so forth and so on. Yeah. So what you have is a Westocentric sociology of Islam or Orientalistic sociology of Islam, where the emphasis, as I mentioned earlier, is on empirical research and theoretical frameworks, and the attempt to steer away from divine explanations of a social reality, and steering away from divine explanations and or basically denying the existence of God or being aloof from that. And concepts such as gender roles, race, and globalization. And of course, there are other concepts, not just these three that I have just mentioned. So in contrast to contemporary scholars, which I'm going to talk about a bit later in the next few slides, scholars examine Islam as a diverse lived experience, basically shaped by ethnicity, parochiality, politics, and globalization. And this is the scholars who study Islam in this particular way. And so some pay attention to concepts such as the Ummah, which is the community of believers, and religious identity. For example, why some Muslim groups or members of a particular group, such as Tabligh Jamaat or Tabligh Jamaat, which some of you may be familiar with, has got a particular religious identity because of the way they present themselves outwardly. But identity is not just garment or what one wears, but also what one believes or practices. And so different groups have got different ways of identifying themselves. Whilst others focus on power, gender, and post-colonial reality. So these scholars also challenge the earlier Eurocentric views, that seek to explain Islam and how it's practiced. And I'm talking about Westocentric scholars here. So what you will see when you're looking at Western sociology of Islam is that generally these perspectives differ in methodology, assumptions, and the balance between religion, culture, and social structures. So Islam is studied in a variety of ways, if that makes sense. Going forward, Westocentric or Orientalistic sociology of Islam. Historically, you will see focuses on studying Islam as not so much a comprehensive, complete way of life, actually avoiding to study it in that particular way. Um, but the study is more skewed towards the symbols of resistance against Western modernity. In other words, Islam is studied as a system, a life order, or a way of living, or a religion that is resistant to modernity. And Weber's work and Mark's work, if we want to identify some perspectives, are often studied in this, have often studied Islam in this particular way, that Islam is a way of life or a system that is resistant to modernity, and therefore it is other. And basically, then what needs to be done is to make Islam non-resistant to Western modernity and to be modernity friendly and become part of modernity through its own internal transformation. So classical sociologists such as Marx and Weber, and subsequently Marxist and Weberian perspectives often describe Muslim societies as ancient, as backward, as pre-modern, and resistant to modernity. And basically, this claim or this argument that Islam is inherently a backward pre-modern religion or pre-modern way of life, and it can never be part of, or it can never be like the European countries or like the West. And so that's the difference between the West and Islam. And basically, you will see that by um, presenting in the investigation of Islam and Muslims through a sociological lens, these kind of scholars actually reduce Islam to something symbolic, symbol of resistance to modernity, or is framed in such a way that Islam is hostile, and this whole idea of what is happening in the modern world today, that Islam is the problem. Yeah, Islam is the problem, that we need to get away from Islam in order for Muslim in the Muslim world to be same as those in the West. So that becomes somewhat of a problem, because Islam is more than just that. So, for instance, Karl Marx frequently linked the Asiatic mode of production with Muslims or Muslim societies. In other words, that Muslim societies are backward. They have got a mode of production which he describes as Asiatic, or another name could be traditional, rural, non-modern, and believe that these societies would never accept capitalism, because capitalism is a mode of production that frees societies, frees groups, and enables them to be modern, progressive, and are able to produce wealth and prosperity on large scale, as the West is able to do, and uh, establish a healthy well-being. And so, like Karl Marx, Max Weber actually found that, in his view, that the power that exists as the basic engine of human relations and the driving force behind modernity, capitalism and rationalization, they were something not present in Muslim or in Islam, and therefore described the Muslims having a warrior ethos. This whole idea of jihad, that it is all about fighting. And uh, with that warrior ethos, Muslims are obstructed from engaging in um, uh, capitalist pursuit of what we might generally call capitalist pursuit of happiness. And so, it's an obstruction, according to him, towards the development of capitalist rationality. This whole idea of, engaging in banking, having a banking system with interest and loan and contract and all those kind of things, so people can make money. On the other hand, then we come to existentialistic sociology of Islam, which is different from Westocentric sociology of Islam. Here, the scholars have got a different focus. And so existential sociology of Islam acknowledges the existence of God, and those who are studying Islam and Muslims may not necessarily believe in God or be religious, but they acknowledge that God exists, at least for the believers, and so uh, they acknowledge on behalf of Muslims in this case. And but having said that, their principal focus or main focus is on humans and their experiences. So why people believe, or why Muslims believe in what they believe, why they do certain things in certain ways, and how they are different from others or non-Muslims, etc., etc. So it explores how individual Muslims create meaning, create meaning to be what they are, and therefore their identity and purpose in life. And existentialist sociologists highlight the fact that Muslims exercise personal choice, responsibility, and they want to understand or learn more about lived experiences of Muslims, and therefore opt to explain that what Muslims do um, and think, and their doctrines, etc., etc., can be explained by exploring their belief and the interpretation of their belief, and how they practice their belief, so through their everyday life. So, for example, existentialist sociologists might want to understand this by looking at why Muslims go to prayer every Friday. What does that mean? So that's an everyday practice, and they will focus on that. Existentialist sociologists, some of them that I will mention is Brian Tanner, someone who was my colleague some while back. So these existentialist sociologists, such as Brian Tanner, pioneered a sociology of Islam and basically presented an argument that classical sociologists, meaning Marx, Weber, and Durkheim, misrepresented Islam. For example, Islam as a warrior religion, or symbolic system resistant to modernity, etc., etc. So Turner actually used Weber's interpretive method, and came to the conclusion that modernity cannot flourish in Muslim societies. So this is what Weber said, but Tena actually disagrees with that. And Salvatore is another scholar fall in this category who also argues that Max Weber represented Islam as a warrior religion, which is actually an incorrect label, and Islam is more than more than a warrior religion, although it has got jihad, but it's got nothing to do with what Marx Weber talks about in relation to warrior religion. And Islam itself is a civilizational order with a very rich scholarly tradition. As we know, Islam actually was intellectually ruling the world for 1,000 years. It's got a very broad cultural base, and civil, social, and governance laws permeate the entire religion. So both Turner and Salvatore study Islam as an existential reality, that it is something that is lived out, and that is by Muslims themselves through their practice of Islam in everyday life. Existentialist sociologists of Islam actually highlight the fact that Islam is internally diverse. And so it's not simply just a doctrine. It is internally diverse based on different interpretations, different ideological formulations. And so, for example, Islam has got 4 schools of thought, that is Sunni Islam, and it is internally very heterogeneous. We have got different ethnic groups, parochial groups, ideological groups, political groups, so forth and so on. Okay, so that is all. I hope that that made sense. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Pak Janali. Interesting explanation about the comparison of general sociologists, yes, especially in Western, and how some scholars also start to explain about the existentialist sociologists that explain about the Islamic words. And next, Pak Syifa, I give you time. I'm afraid maybe your time is only 20 minutes, Pak Syifa. Time is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Bu Dina. I'll try my best to shorten my presentation. I learned a lot from Jen Ali's presentation on sociology and Western centric sociology and existential sociology. And right now, I'm going to present on in terms of a bridging between sociology and the Eastern intellectualism or intellectual tradition. I would like to present or to ask general questions on what Islamic intellectual tradition can bring to navigate challenges of modernity, including the challenges in terms or in the field of sociology and social life, especially because most of you probably coming from Islamic communication and counseling department. Maybe I'll touch on that as well. So today I would like to begin with a question that may sound simple, but it's actually very important for future of Muslim life. So what can the Islamic intellectual tradition offer to Muslims who live in a world of artificial intelligence, global media, climate change, climate anxiety, mental health problems, plural societies, political conflicts, wars, for example, biomedical ethics and technology, and rapidly changing moral debates. So this question matters because many of young Muslims today stand between 2 pressures. On the one side, They sometimes hear that the past was perfect, that everything important has already been completed, has been achieved by the past generation, and that the task of Muslims today is only to repeat what earlier generations said or have achieved. On the other side, they sometimes hear that tradition is a burden, that modern life requires us to leave inherited Islamic thought behind, and the progress means cutting off ourselves away from the past. So cutting off from the past means, yeah, past is only a burden that we not need to look at it. So both positions are too simple. Islam is not religion of empty repetitions. At the same time, Islam is not a religion without memory, without tradition. Muslims inherit revelation, disciplines of interpretation, legal reasoning, ethical vocabularies, spiritual practices, institutions of learning, and many others. This is usually called, this kind of inheritance is called turath. So when I say turath, it means from the topic is Eastern intellectual traditions, Eastern intellectualism. So the central point of this presentation is that the future of global Islam depends neither on nostalgic return to the past nor uncritical absorption to modernity. It depends on a disciplined, critical, and ethical approach or ethical retrieval of Turath, so that Islamic tradition can speak meaningfully to contemporary institutions, sciences, politics, media, human anxieties, or to these problems, basically. So let's turn to what Islamic intellect tradition, which include under the umbrella of Turath. So the word Turath is often translated as heritage, legacy, inheritance, tradition. In Islamic studies, especially, it usually refers to the inherited intellectual and civilizational archive of Muslim, intellectual civilizational tradition of Muslims. But we must be careful that because the Torah should not be reduced to old books on a shelf, on library shelf, for example, manuscripts in library, or quotations from famous scholars. Because many other, because Torah is wider than that. It includes revealed texts, interpretive practices, scholarly debates, legal methods, theological arguments, right? Spiritual disciplines, ethical formation, educational institutions, and collective memory. At the center of the Torah are the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet. Around these sources, Muslim scholars develop many disciplines. Tafsir, for example, qira'at. In terms of legal reasoning and reasonings, for example, you can find many different kind of reasoning from kalam tradition, from falsafah or philosophy tradition, from usul or principle of Islamic law, for example. Ethical formation, we can learn from adab, tradition, akhlaq, or characters, how to develop human traits, human characters, tasawwuf, for example, mystical tradition in Islam, social wisdom, sociology of Islam, maybe include in here, siyasah, for example, maslahah, maqasid, customary practices of Muslim societies. So there are many wide range of traditions and inheritance that we have in the Islamic tradition. So those are Turath. Turath is has many layers, very wide ranging context, right? Not only text, but also disciplines, method, reasoning, virtues, consciousness, memories, and many others. So why then Muslim must need to revisit what so-called Turath, what we call it Turath? Not because the present should be escaped, that we need to run away from what we are facing right now in modern time, but because the present must be ethically legible, must be ethically we can read it. Legible means we can read it, we can understand our current problems, we can judge it, we can respond to the challenges with moral clarity. Because modern life often moves faster than moral reflection. Technology develops quickly. Social media changes how people think, argue, and feel. Political conflict circulates instantly across the world. New medical technologies raise questions about life, death, the body, and reproduction and human dignity. Young people face anxiety, loneliness, mental health, identity crisis, confusion, moral uncertainty. In a such world, Muslims need more than slogans. They need intellectual depth and ethical orientation. And here, Turath can provide those kind of guidance. Turath matters for at least 4 reasons. Turath gives continuity. So community without memory becomes spiritually rootless. It means we have no root. If Muslims forget their inherited treasure, they may still call themselves Muslim, but they will find it harder to think Islamically about new problems. Second, Turath gives us also method. It trains disciplined interpretation, not merely personal opinion. Muslim does not simply ask, what do I feel? What is trending? A Muslim intellectual tradition asks, what is evidence? What is the purpose? What is the harm? What is the public good? What is the moral responsibility before God? The third one, Turath also gives us an ethics. It stores vocabularies of justice, mercy, adab, manners, etiquettes, dignity, amanah, trusteeship, responsibility, and public good. These vocabularies are not decorative. They are not accessories. They shape how Muslims understand human life. Fourth, Turath also enables us to reform from within, to do a reform project from within. Reform becomes stronger when it grows from ethical and intellectual resource of the tradition itself, not exported or imported from other tradition. If reform is only imitation from outside, it may not take a root in Muslim moral consciousness. But if reform grounded in the tradition, in the Turath, it become both not only authentic, but also transformative. Now, what is modernity? What challenges that modernity pose for a Muslim's life? Many discussions about Islam and modernity become confused because modernity is treated simply as the West. This is not accurate enough. Modernity is not merely a place, it's a global condition. It recognizes time, authority, knowledge, economy, right? Politics, media, and the conception of human self. Modernity includes rationalization. As probably in sociology of Islam, we learn the rationalization of conducts, routinization in Weber's scheme of authority, for example, from charismatic authority, traditional authority, and rational or bureaucratic authority, right? This means science, bureaucracy, calculation, measurement, or technical efficiency become very powerful. We see rationalization in universities, hospitals, government offices, corporations, research laboratories, and digital system. Modernity also includes differentiation, where religion is, state is, market is, school, media, family, law become specialist systems with their own rules. In pre-modern societies, these spheres are often more closely connected. In modern societies, they are separated, professionalized, and regulated in different ways. Modernity includes acceleration as well. Differentiation, acceleration feels like faster because of urbanization, digital media, right? News travel instantly, outrage spread quickly. Like, for example, the war in Iran between US and Israel, the impact goes globally, right? Modernity also includes autonomy. Individual emphasize rights, choice, self-expression, personal identity, personal right. This can protect human dignity, but can also create confusion when freedom is separated from responsibility. It also include technoscience, biomedicine, artificial intelligence, etc., etc. Finally, modernity includes also pluralism, different religions, ideologies, lifestyles, worldviews. Muslim belief, study, work, communicate, negotiate with people who may share the same faith and moral framework, but in very plural societies. So modernity gives us a power and possibility. It produces universities, hospitals, etc., but it also produces dislocation, fragmentation, domination, surveillance, consumption, and loneliness, ecological damage. So Muslim must respond to it not simply by rejection, but it should not be blind admiration. It should be with an ethical diagnosis and ethical criticism, right? How then modernity changed Muslim lives? As we mentioned earlier, the challenge of modernity is not only doctrinal, it's civilizational, institutional, and also probably existential. First, there is a challenge of authority. Who speaks for Islam in fragmented public sphere? Is it the scholar, the state, influencer, activist, university professor, preacher, algorithm, or who, right? The crisis of authority, because in algorithmic society right now, sometimes people who speak louder gets more authority than who specialize in, who study deeply in certain issues. There's also a challenge of knowledge. How do revelation, reason, science, social theory communicate with one another? Muslims need to avoid two extremes. One extreme rejects modern knowledge as if science and social analysis have nothing to do with one another. The other extreme treats revelation as irrelevant to public reasoning. A major Islamic intellectual tradition must engage multiple forms of knowledge without losing its moral character. So there is also a challenge of ethics. How should Muslims judge issues such as AI, artificial intelligence, gender dignity, economic inequality, digital addiction, war, biomedical advanced technology, mental health, etc., etc. There's a challenge of identity. How can Muslims be rooted without becoming isolated? How can Muslims participate in plural societies without losing ethical distinctiveness? How can Muslims confident without becoming arrogant, and open-minded without becoming empty, right? There's also institutional challenges as well. Values do not live in personal intentions. They must be embodied in education, law, media, counseling practice, civic life. A Muslim ethical response to modernity must therefore move from personal piety, kesalahan individu, to institutional imagination, to social piety as well. So, for example, for students of counseling, this challenge is very concrete. Many people today not only ask what is legally allowed. They ask, how do I live with anxiety? How do I forgive? How do I find meaning? How do I repair my family? How do I make choices without losing my soul? Torah contains resources for this question through concepts such as tazkiyatun nafs, right? Purification of ourselves, sabr, patience, tawakkul, reliance on God, rahmah, mercy, adab, amanah, ihsan. This concept need a careful translation, careful analysis and interpretation to responsible counseling practice. Okay, let's now take a look of how usually Torah is approached and read by Muslims or by scholars of Islam. The first one is apologetic nostalgia. So this approach treats the past as perfection, as we a little bit touched earlier. It comforts identity because it allows Muslims to feel proud. It says our civilization was great. We have golden age in the ancient, in the medieval era, for example. Our scholars was brilliant. Our past was complete. There is a truth in remembering greatness, okay? But Muslims should not be ashamed of their intellectual history. But nostalgia can become dangerous when it becomes more romantic, defensive, apologetic, unrealistic. It may ignore internal problems, historical complexity, or the need for reform. The second one is skeptical rupture, skeptical attitude, approach toward Torah. This approach treats the past mainly as an obstacle, as a burden. It criticizes stagnation, authoritarianism, patriarchy, sectarianism, inherited limitation. Asobia, for example, is translated as merely fanatism, not social cohesion, as mentioned earlier by Professor Jan Ali, right? However, if rupture becomes total, Muslims lose their moral grammar. They become dependent on external vocabularies. They may no longer know how to think from within their own tradition. They just copy it from other, right? To develop or to be cultivated to face this modernity. The third approach is critical approach, critical retrieval. This is, to me, is the best option for navigating modernity. Critical retrieval or critical approach reads the past as a resource, but not as an idol. It is rooted enough to be authentic, critical enough to be honest, and creative enough to be useful. So critical approach asks several questions. For example, what problem did this inherited text, concept, institution address in its own time? What principle can be recovered from it? Which parts were shaped by particular historical context? Which parts carry deeper ethical purpose? How can the principle can be translated into contemporary life? Right. Critical retrieval refuses both self-comfort as nostalgic approach and self-hatred as the skeptical rupture approach. It does not say that everything old is perfect. It does not also say that everything inherited is useless. It treats Torah as a living discipline of judgment. So this posture is especially important for young scholars like our students right now, for ourselves. Without roots, you may become fashionable but shallow, dangkal. Without critique, you may become loyal to revive the past, but unthinking. Without translation, you may become knowledgeable, but socially irrelevant. So there are many scholars who are trying to bridge, right, to bridge and read the Torah in a critical way to become relevant, to be able to respond to the challenges of modernity. One of the Muslim scholars is named Muhammad Abdu, who is also inspiration for the establishment of Muhammadiyah in Yogyakarta and Indonesia in general. Abdu was a major modern Muslim reformer who believed that Islam could respond to modern knowledge without abandoning revelation. For him, Tawhid was not only a theological doctrine, it was also a principle for purification. Tawhid liberates the mind from superstition, blind imitation, taqlid, or misplaced secret authority, like TBC, secret respect to somebody who is considered saint, for example. Abdul believed that revelation encouraged reason, evidence, inquiry, and reflection. He did not see reason as enemy of faith. Rather, reason is one of the gifts through which human beings understand signs of God in revelation and creation. This is important because some Muslims fear that reason will weaken religion. Abdu argued the opposite. Reason, when disciplined by Tawhid and revelation, strengthens religious life. I wrote an article on Abduh as well sometimes ago on how Abduh rational approach, rational theology, also have an impact on in universities of Islam in Indonesia, brought by Harun Yahya, in civilization organization like Muhammadiyah by Kiai Haji Ahmad Dahlan, for example. So those are how Abduh tried to understand Torah and apply it to face the modern challenges. The other one that can be mentioned here is also Fazlur Rahman. Fazlur Rahman have a pretty big influence in Indonesia through some of his students like Buya Syafi'i Ma'arif, Nur Khalis Majid, Amin Rais to some extent. Rahman is important because he offered a method for interpreting revelation in relation to changing historical circumstances. His famous approach is usually called double movement. It's pretty familiar in Islamic state universities in Indonesia. The first movement begins from the present questions. What challenge requires guidance now? For example, we may ask about economic justice, family ethics, bioethics, education, gender dignity, or digital life. Then the interpreter moves from the present to historical context of revelation. What did the Quran address in its situation? What social, moral, or institutional problems were being transformed or being addressed here? What was the direction of the reform? After that, the interpreter identifies a general moral principle that emerged from the text. The goal is not to escape from the text, but to understand the ethical movement. What does the revelation teach about justice, mercy, human dignity, responsibility, social reform, or protection of the vulnerables? Finally, the interpreter returns from the moral principle to the present. How should the principle guide to this situation? What kind of law, institution, policy, communication practice, or consular ethic, for example, for our purpose, will embody that principle right now? Rahman's method protects interpretation from two dangers. It protects us from literalist rigidity, where the historical form is repeated without understanding its moral direction. It also protects us from ruthless relativism, where modern preference replaces revelation. For Rahman, historical inquiry does not weaken Islam. It invigorates Islamic thought by recovering the moral direction of revelation. Okay, that's from Rahman. The other one, for example, we can also learn from Muhammad Abid al-Jabiri, whose critiques of Arab reason also inspire some basic documents in Muhammadiyah for Majlis Tarjih, for example, Bayani, Burhani, Irfani. Al-Jabiri is useful because he reminds us of that Muslims must not only read Torah from inside loyalty, they must also create Fatma, yeah. They must also create critical distance. If we are too close to the inherited tradition, we may repeat it without understanding it. If we are too far from it, we may reject it without understanding it. So Al-Jabiri proposed in Nahnu wa Turath, for example, the contemporary readers need to disconnect. Al-Qati'ah al-Epistemologiyah, he said. Objectify and reconnect again with the Torah. Disconnect does not mean abandoning the Torah. It means breaking from inherited ways of reading the past that prevent from fresh understanding. Objectify means making the Torah an object of study through history, structure, and critique. Reconnect means recovering what remains productive for future Arab Muslim agency. This is difficult but necessary discipline for him. Many people approach tradition emotionally. They either defend it before understanding or attack it before understanding it. He said it's qira'ah salafiyah to the Torah. What kind of reason is operating in this text? What social and political conditions shape it? What concept become dominant and why? Which resources can still help Muslims to think responsibly today. So for students, Al-Jabiri teach intellectual honesty. Love for tradition should not prevent from analysis, from critical analysis. Critique of tradition should not become contempt, not insult, not contempt. The goal is not to humiliate Tullah. The goal is to make Muslim contemporary with their own tradition. In other words, Muslims should not merely live under inherited concepts. They should understand how those concepts were formed and how they can be responsibly used today. The other, also Moroccan, Al-Jabri is from Morocco, a Moroccan thinker that also probably useful in knowing or in studying, learning how to bridge the Turath with the modern challenges is Taha Abdul Rahman. He wrote several books which emphasize the importance of akhlaq, su'alul akhlaq, or the questions, the inquiry on akhlaq. Taha Abdul Rahman, Taha's question is not only how can Muslims modernize. His deeper question is what kind of human being does modernity produce? This is a powerful question for students of counseling, especially because counseling or psychology related to that is concerned with the human person, human self, human subjectivity, human well-being, not only with external systems. Taha argues that modernity has an ethical deficit. It can produce human being who is technically powerful but spiritually empty, autonomous but morally confused, connected but lonely, informed but not wise. For Taha, the Islamic tradition should not merely imitate the modern rationality. It should offer an alternative moral and spiritual vision. One of his key ideas is about iktiman, trusteeship, amanah. Amanah as Khalifa on earth. Human beings are not absolute owners of the world. They are entrusted agents before God. Life, knowledge, body, society, and nature are not only object for unlimited exploitation, they are trusts that require responsibility. Taha also emphasized tazkiyah, moral purification, moral and spiritual purification. This means that reform is not only institutional, it's also personal and spiritual. A corrupt soul can corrupt good institution. Purified intention can strengthen social responsibility. Another important idea is that knowledge becomes ethical through benefit and circulation. So need to be spread. Knowledge is not only possession of somebody. It must be served truth, responsibility, human flourishing. This is relevant for communication students, for example. Media literacy is not only about producing message effectively, but also about asking whether messages serve truth, dignity, mercy, public good or not. Taha complements Abdul, Fazlur Rahman, Jabiri, because Abdul emphasizes reasons and reform, Rahman emphasizes moral principles and historical interpretation, Jabiri emphasizes critique of reason, Taha emphasizes ethical formation and spiritual responsibility. Together, they show that critical approach to the Torah must include mind, method, history, and soul. There is also one that just passed away several months ago by name of Abdul Aziz Hashirina, is my teacher in Virginia. He wrote a book called Islam Biomedical Ethics, right? Because the value of Torah become clearer when we apply to real problems, like what has been attempted by people of scholars like Abdul Aziz Hashirina. In biomedical ethics, modern medicine raises difficult questions about organ transplantation, end-of-life care, reproductive technology, genetic intervention, brain death, human dignity. These questions cannot be answered by legal formulas only, by fatwa, for example. They require moral reasoning. Abdul Aziz Hashirina's work of Islamic biomedical ethics show how fiqh, usul fiqh, kalam, theology, Islamic theology, maslahah, maqasid syariah, Islamic principles of legal reasoning, theological reflection can contribute to contemporary ethical judgment. In this case, Turath is not a museum. It becomes a method for thinking about life, harm, benefit, dignity, consent, justice, and public good. Doctor, counselor, family member, religious scholar, patients may all be involved in difficult decisions. Islamic ethics must be able to speak with clarity, compassion, and responsibility, not only just giving fatwas, right? Political moderations. There is also another important, I wrote maybe 2 years ago on reason of political and religious moderation, reading Ghiyathul Umam by Imam Haramain al-Juwaini, for example. Classical Islamic political thought is sometimes misunderstood as rigid and unrealistic, but a reading of al-Juwaini's Ghiyathul Umam shows a more complex picture. Al-Juwaini reflected on ideal and non-ideal political condition. He discussed what leadership, authority, juristic responsibility, communal judgment, and what happens when the ideal conditions cannot be achieved or is not met. This is important for contemporary Muslim societies in Southeast Asia and Indonesia especially. Concepts such as wasatiyah that also become our topic, moderation, civic harmony, plural coexistence should not be treated merely as state slogans. They can be connected to deeper classical reasoning about public order, communal welfare, responsible leadership. These examples show that critical retrieval, critical approach is practical. It can guide medical ethics, counseling ethics, communication ethics, political ethics. This question is not whether Turath has answers ready-made for everyday modern issues. The question is whether Turath has principles, method, and moral imagination that can help Muslims reason responsibly. For example, in the case of Al-Juwaini, we don't have precedents when a state is not Islamic state. How can we regulate our, for example, Islamic private laws regarding marriage? Then NU produced what so-called a concept called al-amru waliul amri ad-daruri bishawkah, and Muhammadiyah developed the concept of al-ahdi darul ahdi wa shahada, for example. That's also inspired by al-Juwaini's concept in Ghiyathul Umam. All right, what is the best method of reading Turath then?
Syifa, I'm afraid your time is off. Maybe you can.
Okay, I'll conclude it then. Okay. Yeah. So the Turath. Okay. Let me conclude with 5 positions then. The Turath is a living archive. It includes texts, method, virtues, like I mentioned earlier, modernity and social condition. The best way to read the Turath is with a critical approach or critical retrieval. Muslims should avoid apologetic nostalgia that romanticize the past. They should also avoid skeptical rupture that cuts them away from their moral grammar. Critical retrieval is rooted, honest, and creative, right? So as we learn from the last one, right? So, yeah. So Muslim scholars need 3 literacies. We need to understand Turath properly. Turath literacy. We need to also to understand modernity literacy. What our challenges, what our today's challenges, but also ethical translation. We must be able to speak our principles, ethical principle, in modern languages, in modern vocabularies. This is very challenging. Not everybody can do that eloquently. Turath literacy means knowing the classical disciplines. Modernity means understanding contemporary institutions, sciences, media. Ethical translation means communicating inherited principles in ways that can shape real life. So the future of global Islam then is not secured by choosing between the past and the modernity. It is secured by producing in ethical intelligence rooted in Torah and literate in the modern world. The question is not whether Islam can survive modernity. The deeper question is what kind of moral future Islam can help to build within. That's all from me, Bu Dina. Hopefully it's beneficial. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. What an interesting presentation. Yeah, it means I think you need to teach us how to apply Turoth in our department to make sure that we can update it as well the application of Islamic values, Islamic Turoth in new issues that now we like AI, whether how to have Turoth in AI and whatsoever. Okay, everybody, I'm afraid we don't have enough much time. Anyone want to ask questions? Ya, ini Pak Nurwanto already said you may ask in bahasa Indonesia as well. I'm going to translate it to Pak Jan. Okay, I give you time. Satu, Mbak Ayunda, Zem, and Beria ya. Three first. Okay, Mbak Ayuhan, please, can you turn on your camera?
Sorry, I can't open my camera because I have many tasks.
Okay.
Okay,
No problem.
for your ending. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon. My name is Ayuhan Fabianisa. Usually I call Fabia. I'm from Masters of Islamic Studies. I want to asking to all speakers for Turas or Islamic studies relevant Islamic studies to artificial intelligence. How long relevant artificial intelligence to Islamic studies? I mean, seberapa jauh relevansi daripada studi keislaman, perempuan studi keislaman untuk apa namanya di dunia kecerdasan buatan. That's my question. Thank you for your understanding. I'm sorry for any mistake. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
No problem. Thank you, Ayuhan, for the question. The next, Zem.
Yeah, okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Zamzam Abdu and I'm from International Islamic Communication Program at UMYA, Universitas Muhammadiyah, Yogyakarta. So my question is, based on what we heard about Western sociology approach, especially like how thinkers like Max Weber and another analyze Islam like mainly through like social and empirical frameworks, and I'm wondering how far this perspective still influence the way Islam is represented in global media today. Like, for example, in news and social media, Islam is often framed in terms of politics, conflicts, or social issues rather than as a complete way of life. So my question is, how can Muslim scholars critically like engage with this I mean academic framework and media narrative while still preventing the authentic understanding of Islam without rejecting academic academic methods completely? This is my question.
I think the
Yeah. Wait, Jan, Ali, one more question.
Okay.
I will write up all. One more, Beria. Please, quick questions.
First, my name is Beria Syifa Karunia Sakadarudin. I'm from International Program of Islamic Communication, UMYA. And I just want to ask, based on your experience, could you share any real examples of successful collaboration between Western and Eastern collaboration between Western and Eastern approach in Islamic studies. Just that. Thank you.
Okay, so your question for Pak Syifa ya.
Yeah.
Okay, so I give time to Jan Ali because I think in Sydney already Maghrib time ya, Jan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
please.
yeah, we are about 15 minutes late. Yeah, so the question was about the um, portrayal of Islam in the media in certain ways, which are often derogatory and demeaning of Islam and Muslims, and how could Muslim scholars or what scholars of Islam are doing about that? I think we need to be careful because the sociological analysis or the social scientific analysis of Islam and Muslims um, is different from the media portrayal of Islam and Muslims. And I think media portrayal of Islam and Muslims is very much motivated by economic and political imperatives and are framed in absence of consultation with academic work. Um, and so, what I will say is that the media portrayal of Islam and Muslims is very much a non-academic discussion and analysis of Islam and Muslims. And the narratives are often framed for the purposes of political or economic gains. As for the investigation into Islam and Muslims from an academic, social scientific perspective, I think we could then divide that into two. There is one school of thought or one group who are often just critical of Islam and Muslims, and they can't find anything good in Islam and Muslims, whilst the other group is a more objective and analytical in their assessment of Islam and Muslims. Scholars such as John Esposito, Giles Keppel, Olivia Roy, sociologists and scholars of Islam who provide a more nuanced and more balanced investigation of Islam. So I think they're doing great work, but definitely not the media, particularly the Western media. I hope that answered the question.
Okay. I have a further question for Janali
Yeah.
about that. And how about uh, the intention or the interesting of Islam in academic term in Australia right now? I heard that there's
Yeah.
some issues in your university as well.
Yeah. So again, Islamic studies is different from sociology of Islam, um, because Islamic studies itself is a discipline, is independent discipline, and it's a more broad-based approach under which you could also bring theology as well. And so what is happening in the West, especially in contemporary period, including in Australia, is that there is a focus away from study of Islam and Muslims at an academic level. And one reason often cited by the academic institutions is the low enrollment, which actually defies the reality because at a time when Islam and Muslims are, the target of media and everyone is talking about Islam and Muslims, especially in the West, that to then say that there is not enough interest in it at an academic level by students doesn't make sense. And I think there is something uncertain and unsettling about that. Having said that, I think uh, the sociological study or academic study of Islam and Muslims, particularly in the West, is still reasonably new. um, eh, except in some well-established academic institutions such as Oxford University, Harvard University, where Islamic studies has in the past been under Orientalist studies or Middle Eastern studies, and now recently Islamic studies. But um, I think Islamic studies has been, and I'm talking about Islamic studies slash sociology of Islam, um, has been hugely politicized. And in Australia, it seems to be the case. And so instead of promoting and engaging in more academic, intellectual discussion about Islam and Muslims, universities are actually moving away from that kind of discussion by closing down Islamic studies programs. Yeah, so again, I would say that it is politically motivated, ideologically motivated, and to some extent, economic reasoning behind it that, it's not making enough money for the university.
Okay, so it seems like Durkheim and Weber still working on Astaga.
Yes.
Okay, Jan, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Pak
Thank you.
Siva, then?
All right. Thank you for the questions, Ayuhan, Fadia, Beria, Zemzem. Yeah. The first question is regarding the relevance of Islamic Torah, Islamic studies in the face of AI, algorithmic, era, right? Let's say, yeah, uh, probably right now we can say, yeah, thank God that we have Islam, but at the same time, uh, we have AI to ask everything. Sometimes people uh, what associate with a godlike sources to us. However, but AI are generated by what's so-called algorithm, right? Right now, if we use AI in terms of use AI as if it can answer everything, it can replace human position probably, as it depend on us. But at the same time, AI or any other AI generated media can also help us to make our lives easier. For example, to prepare my PowerPoint presentation. It's hard for me to prepare PowerPoint presentation. Usually it takes hours, even days to make it more readable or visually interesting, for example. And we can use AI, whether GPT, whether Notebook LM, or many others, or Canva, right? It can help can make our lives easier. But the one danger that we must be aware of is that in the AI era, information usually is something that is fed to us. We are forced by AI, by algorithm, to receive information that we like, that we are searching for it, right? Islamic studies, Islamic Torah, for example, give us a reminder. We need also to look into ourselves. Look through, for example, Tazkiyatun Nafas, as we mentioned earlier, through muhasabah, for example, through reflection, that our self, our humanity, we mentioned earlier about human self, human subjectivity, human well-being, is not generated, is not given by algorithm. We need to reflect on ourselves too. So Islamic Torah, Islamic studies, and including the Torah, the Sufi tradition, the Quranic tradition, can guide us to, can drive us to have more attentive, more attention, more consciousness, more intention. That all is for the sake of God, for the betterment of our lives before God, for example. That can make us more conscious that we are human being, the slave of God, to serve God, for example. So is Islamic studies, the study of the Torah, reminding us about that, right? So whatever challenges that we are having, not something come externally from algorithm feed, for example, but also from what we really need. We need to reflect on the Torah. We need to read the Torah critically and guide us how to respond to modern challenges, including the AI, for example. Hopefully that answers the questions, Fadia. And the second one, I want to address Beria's question regarding, is there any successful collaboration regarding the Islamic studies and sociological challenges or sociological Western and modernity, with Western sociology and modernity, for example? Of course, yes. For example, right now, we have how many Muslims who live in the Western countries? In the Torah, we don't have that kind of, for example, Muslim become minority. It used to be because during Islam Golden Age, Muslim world are mostly majority. They deal with minority. They divide the world between Darul Harb, the abode of wars, and the abode of peace, and Darul Salam and Darul Harb, for example. That is not applicable right now. But we still can see how, for example, Muslim in the West, I don't know, I think Jan Ali also experienced that, how to integrate with the modern society, with a plural society. They develop what's so-called fiqhul aqalliyat, for example, the fiqh of minority, rooted from the Torah, how to live as a minority in Western countries. One of them is, for example, we know the concept of al-adah muhakkamah, right? The customs can be source of law as well. So to become a modern citizen, then they need to respect what's so-called the law of the land. That is derived from what's so-called al-adah muhakkamah. So there is the Torah can give us a moral guidance of how to live in a modern life. Although with the modern challenges, modern different secular mind, for example, in terms of citizenship, but still Muslims can live meaningfully in the secular, in the pluralistic world in the West, for example. Or, like I mentioned earlier, a scholar whose name is Abdulaziz Hashedina, for example, in terms of biomedical ethics, the secular biomedical ethics, respect for what's so-called autonomy of a patient's beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. And he tried, rooted in Islamic scholarship from usul fiqh, from kalam, from theology, from tasawwuf as well, what kind of moral reasoning that Muslims have to develop, for example, what kind of autonomy that Muslims patients have. Is it total autonomy, or can be, for example, modified autonomy? In terms of harm, what so-called harm? Because one of the basic principles in medicine is do no harm, from Hippocratic Oath, for example. What is harm, mafsadah, in Islamic context means? So this kind of engagement with the Torah at the same time with the modern challenges and issues need to be collaborated, so that, for example, non-Muslim doctors in the West can deal with the Muslim patients in a good way, in Islamic way, because they are understanding what morally important, ethically important for Muslims, and vice versa. Muslim doctors know how to treat non-Muslim patients in their own ethics, because respecting the others' epistemological, ethical perspective, things like that. So that happens in the West as well. So our main task right now is that, okay, we are pretty familiar with the Muslim tradition, Muslim scholarship, Islamic fiqh, for example, but most of the Muslim scholars or Muslims intellectuals have no enough ability, competency to translate those ethical framework in a global, in modern vocabularies that can be understood by the global audience. So we need both skills, understanding the literacy of tools, literacy of modernity, and the skills and competence to translate ethical principles from the tools and implement it in a modern life. That's from me, Bu Dina. Hopefully that
Oh,
answers as well.
thank
Thank you
you
very
very
much.
much, Pak Syifa. Maybe you can continue this lecture in the next semester. You will teach in filsafat ilmu ya, teman-teman. Nanti untuk yang KPI angkatan 2025, insya Allah next semester you will meet Pak Syifa to discuss
Insya Allah.
further about Turoth and the implementation on how we're going to apply the philosophy of this knowledge, yeah, especially collaborating Islam and science. Well, Pak Jan Ali already asked permission as well because they're already Maghrib. He sent regards to everyone. And I'm afraid it is all the end of our international guest lecture, everyone, teman-teman. I'm going to deliver as well. Thank you for our co-host from Institut Studi Islam Muhammadiyah Pacitan dan Universitas Muhammadiyah Surabaya, especially Pak Dekan dan Pak Dekan dari Universitas Muhammadiyah Surabaya, Faculty of Islamic Studies and Civilization. Ini sepertinya kita kembaran ini ya Pak, nama fakultasnya. Dan dengan fakultas dan Bapak Ketua dari Institut Studi Islam Muhammadiyah Pacitan. Insya Allah next time we will meet again for the next another international guest lecture. Terima kasih teman-teman. Buat yang KPI jangan lupa presensi di my class ya. So we can kayaknya foto bareng dulu ya. Mungkin bisa di turn on kamera semuanya untuk kita ambil foto bersama. Mas Jidan bagian admin minta tolong di tag fotonya dulu atau yang dari FSIP. 1, 2, 3, smile. Oke, next page ada 5 page ini di saya. Kita ambil lagi 1, 2, 3. Oke, another page 1, 2, 3. Yes, and then last one 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you everyone for coming. See you next time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi
Thank you Pak Syifa.
wabarakatuh.
wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih semuanya.
Terima kasih semuanya. Assalamualaikum.